everyone, and welcome back to our Big Analytics Query. I'm Tom, I'm your host, and today we are talking all things Power BI, Fabric, and the latest updates to both of those. But, of course, not doing it alone. Today we are joined by John. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, firstly, let's start. Who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Jonathan. I'm a data consultant at Simpson Associates. So I work doing data engineering and Power BI things for the company.
Sounds like fairly qualified for this then.
I hope so.
Sounds good. So let's dig in. We spoke about it a few months ago now, but what is Power BI and Fabric? Let's start there.
So Fabric is sort of Microsoft's new data engineering tool. So the idea of it is to bring a lot of existing features they have across Azure together into one unified platform. And that allows you data engineering. And then it also is allowing Power BI to be built on top of it as well. Power BI is their analytics tool. So everything you sort of do your data engineering of inside of Fabric then can be connected into Power BI and you can do all your reporting in it.
So I guess Fabric, we've heard a lot about it, the new fancy tool, but it just kind of encompasses everything else, and then Power BI sits within it. Is that right, or is it a separate?
Sort of. It can be separate, but it's becoming more within it. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Everything's sort of becoming Fabric in total. To go to Power BI now, you search for the word Fabric.
Yeah.
So it's becoming one thing, but yeah, they are separate things still.
And I guess you said you use it a lot in your day-to-day. What are the kind of benefits of using Power BI and Fabric, and together especially?
Yeah. Well, the whole idea is to help businesses visualize the data better to make insights. And Fabric has the advantage of bringing together lots of different technologies. And different coding languages as well. So Python and SQL and things like that to sort of wrangle your data and get it into a way that makes sense. And then Power BI obviously lets you visualize all of that stuff. So the whole idea is just giving companies the ability to understand their data better and then make better insights.
As I mentioned earlier, we spoke a bit about Power BI in our last and storytelling and the benefits of that. So do check out that video if you want to know more about Power BI itself. But I guess kind of going into Fabric, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and any latest updates that we've had this month?
Yeah, so it's quite good, Fabric. It's being updated quarterly, as is Power BI, to be fair to it as well. Because when it first came out, there was some features that were lacking, but as we keep going every quarter, we're getting new and better ones that are really helping out.
And it's the same with any sort of...
The same with everything, exactly, yeah. And it shows that they care about the platform, which is very important as well. So the main few are, Git integration. We're getting a lot more updates towards Git. So now we have the ability to branch off into your own workspace while you're developing, which means that you can author things and co-build things without jumping on top of each other's work and things like that.
I guess then also it integrates source control.
It does. All that's becoming integrated and a lot better, yeah. So we didn't have that initially when it came out, but now we do. So it's definitely better for people working as a team to do the data engineering.
Or even just as a kind of safety point of view, a backup as you continue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
along. And if you make a change that's wrong, not that you would ever do that, but I would constantly, but it's a nice safety net. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. It really is that. It's without source control, you're really going to struggle to work as a team, and building things directly into where you would have your production environment is just is a no-no in consultancy. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a good step forward.
Okay, and any others? So we've got Git integration.
Yeah. So another good one that they've brought out is tagging. So it's basically metadata on all of your items inside of Fabric. So whether you have a notebook stored in there, a lakehouse inside of there, a Power BI report stored in there, you have this ability to tag. It's almost just like a string of however long you need onto every item, and then you can search at the top to filter all of your items. So how I see this being beneficial is if you've got a sales team and a HR team both working in the same workspace, all the sales team can tag all the things that they use as sales, or the HR team can tag them as HR, and then you can filter down to HR and sales. It's just an easier way of monitoring things and getting to where you need to quicker, because there's not necessarily an easier way of distinguishing that.
And I guess it means you don't have to call all of your different data sets, files and everything HR dash to...
Exactly, yeah, which can be annoying at times. Yeah, you can just put things in a folder maybe, but still have the metadata to just grab it all out again. And it could be as well that things could be shared. This is a big thing, is that you could have a data set that's shared by HR and sales. And in that case, it might not live in one specific area. You don't want to call it sales underscore HR underscore something.
Oh, that could
annoying as anything. It can get longer and longer. With a tag, you've sort of fixed that issue.
And so you can have multiple tags.
Multiple tags up to 10,
Up to 10.
And 10,000 tags on the workspace, which, I mean, I can't imagine someone blowing it, but I'm sure someone will manage to get there.
I mean, that would be quite impressive.
It would be impressive, yeah.
So tags HR, HR would be a tag, but you've got tags and Git.
Another one, so a different area that we're working on is it's shortcuts and external data sharing. So typically with other technologies, when you do data engineering, you would be having to transfer data all the time. So you've got a source system over here, you've got to set up a pipeline and ingest that data into your database. But what shortcuts do is allow you to point to some of the storage locations, such as Azure Data Lake storage, and you can read that data without any transfer of data, which is great for if you don't want to move data for some security purpose. For example, if you're looking at police data, for example, that data might not be allowed to move out of the environment where it sits. So that's one benefit of it. And then it's just time as well. Having to move data around is a real pain, especially if it's big data, terabytes of data. So it gets around that. And then external data sharing, it's sort of building on top of shortcuts to an extent. It's got the ability where if you've got two different Microsoft tenants that are completely separate from one another, you're able to see data in another tenant as well. And again, it's exactly the same as a shortcut. You can see the data. So it's, again, if you've got tenants where one's police, one's something completely different, HR, two different, completely different, not allowed to talk to one another, but the external data sharing allows you to see that data if you just need it in one place.
And then finally, I also heard about T-SQL notebooks. How's that coming?
Yeah, it's an interesting one actually, because they're not necessarily something that T-SQL is brilliant in the first place because it's built using Microsoft's version of SQL, which if you're used to using Microsoft SQL, it's really good. It's got a lot of functionality in it that you don't usually have.
I guess there's a familiarity. The new world of Fabric.
And what they've done is they've built it into Fabric, and what it allows you to do is connect to different databases you might already have existing, and then you can work inside of a notebook using T-SQL to query these. So it's not necessarily for data engineering as such, is how I'm seeing it. It's more the ability to query all your different databases. You can do cross-database queries, and you can then use the inbuilt charting features inside of Fabric, which will basically allow you to make bar charts, line charts, things like that, and visualize your data. So instead of having to go into Power BI and start building your semantic models and on and doing all that development effort, you can quickly grab your database data and visualize it inside of Fabric, which is a big benefit for speeding up visualizations.
It's not sort of the end solution. It's more of a check along the way.
That's how I'm seeing it at the moment. Yeah, I'm seeing it as just a really useful sort of intermediary step. As you go. Yeah.
And are there any of these features that you're particularly excited about using or think will be really beneficial to businesses?
I think the shortcuts definitely could be. The not having to move data around can be a big challenge because, it's, as I say, it's the security issue of moving data. A lot of companies now, whether it be in the commercial sector, local government, things like that, they don't want to have data stood next to one another all in the same place because of security concerns. And if you can just say, look, you can have a completely separate place to store your data, but when we need to do this cross-querying, they can just all read that data without moving it. I think that will probably settle a lot of nerves, things like that. So I see that as a massive advantage.
And how would you start using that? How would you start using shortcuts as like a tester to see if it's what you're after within a business?
Well, I think they're quite easy to set up inside of Fabric. You've just got to go in and set them up, I suppose. I don't think it's massively complicated. You'd have to just as everything, Google how you set it up in the workspace and it's done. I don't think they're complicated things to set up at all.
So I'm aware that with the Fabric update, as it's coming out quarterly and updating all the time, I think there's over 100 or something new features. So are there any other ones that you want to particularly highlight or are useful for you or other developers?
Yeah, so I mean, there are things like GraphQL and Apache Airflow. They've had updates and been brought into the Fabric area. One I particularly like to talk about is Data Factory, which is obviously a resource within the Azure suite already that exists. What has happened with Fabric now is you're able to, if you've already got a pre-built Data Factory, you can look at it via Fabric and sort of preview it. And I think you can even schedule things as well. So it's Fabric has this idea to be able to bring everything together. And if you can't necessarily integrate it immediately, you can still use it via Fabric. So people don't have to go to different places in order to develop.
So you can't build a new pipeline from scratch.
I don't think you can use Fabric and then go into Data Factory and build it. You can build pipelines and things inside of Fabric using Synapse pipelines, but you can actually develop the actual Data Factory via
but you could
Fabric.
Initiate triggers and set those.
Things like that can be done. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's also been updates to the Databricks API that Fabric uses. So basically now you are able to schedule, well, you already could, but now you can do it more efficiently, and you can schedule Delta Live tables as well from Databricks, all through Fabric, which is a good update to see, especially if you're a Databricks user. The more updates they bring in that allow you to integrate with Databricks, the better.
Moving towards the Power BI side, we know we have our monthly updates of Power BI. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing with Power BI is a lot of what you're seeing with Fabric, where they're trying to bring things together now into one place. So the main thing that they bring in is calculation groups. So that's been a feature in Power BI for a long time.
Yeah.
The ability to build sort of like a calculation group. Basically, instead of building 8 measures for different times, so daily, weekly, yearly, you have one calculation group that will do that for all your different measures. So instead of having, let's say, you've got 8 different measures, you need to do 8 different time series on them. I mean, 64 measures, you now only have to have 8 measures and that one calculation group. So it just speeds up development. And instead of having that as an external tool, that's now been moved into Power BI.
Yeah, I was going to mention, because you could do that before, but you'd have to connect Tabular Editor or something else.
It's just increasing the suite of things immediately available to you in Power BI. And I see that as a massive advantage, because if things aren't initially there for everyone to see, you're going to struggle to develop things, and it's going to slow things down.
And I guess also, especially as we know, asking for new software and new requests can often take a while if it's an external tool. So suddenly only having to get Power BI could be.
Exactly.
You see the DAX editor that's now been included within there. There's slowly bringing useful tools that other people use, but within the suite.
Yeah, I mean, bringing things in. It's just, if you don't know it exists, you might not use it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's there and you see it, at least even if you don't use it, you know it's there now.
Yeah.
It's knowing it's there that's the most important part, and so that's what they're doing.
And are there any things you mentioned the different times? But are there any other good examples that you would use of calculation groups?
Typically, times are what I use them for most of the time. I guess it's anything where you've got some sort of I'm not sure what I'd use other than time series, to be honest. No.
Fair enough.
I can't give you one.
No?
I can't give you an example.
Well, time series is a good example.
Yeah.
And any other features beyond calculation groups in Power BI?
Yeah, so I suppose the big one that everyone likes is Copilot has moved into Power BI. So
the big hot topic.
The big hot topic with AI at the moment. Yeah. So now you've got this ability to have almost like an assistant there with you at all times that can either give you insights on your data or even help you build the entire Power BI report that you're working on. So again, it's just a massive tool to speed up delivery of things. I mean, the ability to have it generate things is great. I actually do think the best part is that you can have a report built and you can ask it, so based on my data, what insights can you gain? And it will give you its own interpretation of things. It might even see something that you might have missed because it can look at all at one go and things like that. So I really do think that's going to be a massive benefit.
Thinking about Copilot, so you can, what tools are there? So you mentioned you can ask the data for different insights. Can you ask for kind of optimizations in report?
You probably could. It's difficult because how it ultimately does is it's just you ask it a question. So if you already have something built and you ask it to look at that, it probably could try and formulate things. Again, it might be that it's better if you wanted to optimize something, just go into Copilot on Google and ask it to do it itself that way. The idea of it inside of Power BI is to look at what you have and either build something or just give you the insights, as I say.
So essentially, it's Clippy, but for Power BI instead of Microsoft Word.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it like that. Yeah.
Which I think we all miss. So,
yeah, exactly.
Welcome back. Yeah. And any other features in Power BI?
The only other one that I think is really brilliant is dark mode has come back
I'm
And I
not
say
surprised
brilliant,
that you're
yeah.
keen to talk about
Yeah,
dark mode.
I think every developer loves dark mode at some point in their life. So it's probably the one that people take away as well and immediately go and switch the Power BI's over to. So if you're interested in dark mode, that's now available in the settings. So,
but it doesn't invert all the colors within your report, does it? It keeps the canvas as
the
white.
canvas stays white. Yeah, the canvas stays white, which ultimately is the most important part of it. But everything else changes black.
Yeah.
The only slight niggle is that the toolbar at the top is like a grey. It's not completely black, but that's,
I think we can probably.
I think we can live with it.
But
yeah,
it allows you to focus on the report.
It does. Yeah, it does. It really does hone into just this is the report and this is everything else. Yeah, it does separate things out.
Which I guess is ultimately what, when you're developing, that's what the end user is going to see. So it's a helpful kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to have it in because it was. I'm pretty sure Power BI dark mode was a thing.
Yeah.
And then they took it away, and now 5 years later, let's say it's come back.
Yeah, they've heard the people.
They've heard the people screaming, "Please bring me dark mode back," and we've got it back. Yeah.
You sound a lot like every developer.
Yeah.
So I guess the obvious question that's next is, with Fabric and Power BI, what are the costs associated with these?
Yeah. So Microsoft Fabric has basically the best way to start is with an F64. So that's the reason I say that is because F64 is where if you have a lot of Power BI users, you end up using a P1 node, which basically allows you to all Power BI users you pay for this one subscription, and that basically works for all the users. So F64 is what P1 is moving into now.
Okay.
So if you have a Fabric F64, you don't need a P1 node anymore, and you can do all your data engineering and your Power BI all through this F64. So F64 has two different costs. You either have the pay-as-you-go model, which is about 7,500, I think, per month. It's about £90,000 a year. That's if you haven't paused it at all, though. So you leave it running constantly all year round. You've also got reservation, and with reservation, what you're able to do is reserve the capacity for an entire year, and then it's significantly cheaper. It's about 41% cheaper. So where you have £90,000 pay-as-you-go all year, you can have about £54,000 for the year reservation with an F64. And then depending on what your needs are as a company, you can either go down or up the F tiers. So you can, if you don't need as much compute and things like that, you can go from F64 down to F32, F16, F8, F4, and like that. If you need a lot more, you can go F128, F240, whatever that is.
Yeah.
F256, if I can do math. You can go up the tiers like that. Although I think it's an F2048 or something like that, which is humongous. I think it costs $250,000 a year, something like that.
So maybe not start with that, but start in the middle.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Are there any good ways to work out whether you should adjust upwards or downwards within your capacity?
Yeah, there is monitoring to figure out how much compute you're using and whether you're sort of hitting the limits and things like that.
Yeah.
The key thing to do is to, before you do anything, is look at how many users do we have, how many reports do we have, what sort of data engineering requirements do we have, and then based on that, start thinking actually what would work best for our needs. Yeah. But I think as ever, start low, and if you need more, you can just scale up. It's not a difficult thing to scale up.
You don't have to wait for the next month or
anything.
No,
you can scale up when you need to scale up. Yeah. It's completely flexible like that. Yeah.
And then do you have any advice for developers in how to kind of get started with the integration of Power BI and Fabric within an existing system and solution?
Yeah, I mean, for someone just trying to get interested in it and have a go, the best thing you can do is just throw yourself in. Try and get a free trial and throw yourself in and have a go. There's plenty of documentation online. You can use Copilot to learn how to do it and things like that. If you're struggling, I'm sure there'll be plenty of things to help you get started. But for a company trying to get into it, the best thing I can recommend is to go slowly. Don't jump in. Don't just throw all your people developing randomly and try and get things to work, because it doesn't tend to work best like that. Even though things have all come together into Fabric, the best thing you can do is still put the best practices in place as you go. And so to do that, the best thing you can do is stand back, read up on all the best practices, and then implement those. And then once that's done, then start developing.
I guess if you try and do everything at the same time, you're potentially going to do absolutely nothing and scare the whole process away.
Well, this is the thing. Yeah, people can jump in too fast, get themselves coding into a mess, and then you've got to do all the work you've just done to get it out again to then rebuild it. Best thing to do is take more time, get everything set up initially, and then go at it properly.
And so would you maybe suggest starting with a smaller area of the business, or like a specific requirement?
Typically, that's the best way to start. Yeah, don't try and do everything all at once. Try and start on a small area. Make sure that works. It's robust. It's tested. You've done all the different business processes you need to do on that, and then extend to another one and keep going. And it extends as well to, you've got source control there, so you can have a dev, test, and prod. So you can do a mess in dev, and still that doesn't matter to your production environments and things like that. Again, that's where linking back to Git integration is brilliant, because you're not crippled by immediately developing in production environments.
Well, thank you very much, John, for your advice and help. I hope it's been a helpful episode for everyone. If you do have any questions or comments, please do leave them down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.